right now. There we go. And it will be available on the Power to Change website afterwards. So if any of your colleagues are missing it, it will be there for them. Okay, great. So I think let's begin. As I say, any questions, do please pop them into the Q&A. If you want to say where you're from, please add that into the chat. It would be great to hear from you and see who we've got joining us today. Okay, so welcome to this Power to Change event, planning for 2023, how your community business will benefit from engaging with young people. I'm Tash, and I'm joined today from Power to Change by Summer. Over the last year, we ran a big campaign, My Community Business, which was telling the stories of 10 organisations that were successfully engaging with young people and what the young people were doing within those community businesses as well. So we were looking at the opportunities that they've been presented with, very creative, more activist-driven roles, and demonstrating a new way to impact socially in their future and in their area. And we met some of the community businesses as well that were creating these inclusive, intersectional spaces and opportunities for young people. So we're hosting this event today because we want to encourage more young people into the community business sector and create more inclusive communities where young people really have a voice to make their places better. We're going to be sharing some learning, so really practical tips for community businesses wanting to engage with young people. We really want to introduce community businesses to the next generation of community business leaders. And we want to pose a question. So what more can we do to get community businesses to work with local young people or to invite them into their business? So today we're really grateful for all of our speakers joining us and excited to hear from Rosa, Sohail and Tash. So they are young researchers at Common Vision who will talk to us about how young people benefit from social impact. And then we're also joined by Leon and Freya from Global Groups. We were lucky enough to have them as part of our big My Community Business campaign over the summer, and I'm really excited that they'll be able to kind of share how they're doing, what they're doing, and what they're bringing to their community business. And then finally, we'll hear from Caroline, Mithushan and Natalia from Common Vision, who will present their top 10 tips for community businesses to engage and reach with young people. So earlier this year, we commissioned Common Vision to undertake a really intensive report for us, interviewing community businesses across the country to explore how community businesses are a mechanism to transform the progressive social intentions of the younger generations into meaningful and sustainable community action. They found that only 7% of community businesses have young people in leadership positions. And today they're going to leave you with some really practical advice that my colleague Summer, if she's available to do this now, has turned into an incredible booklet, which we'll be emailing to everybody after this session. And then finally, we'll end with a bit of a Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please, as I said, pop them into the Q&A and we'll be asking them afterwards. Sorry, I've just realized that the chat is not enabled. So let me do something about that immediately. But first, yeah, I'm going to pass you over to Caroline at Common Vision.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Lovely to be here. I'm Caroline from Common Vision. Just to give you a quick background on the project before I hand over to my in-house team, as well as our 3 community researchers, Rosa, Tash and Sohail. So just sharing the screen. To give you a quick bit of background, Common Vision is a think tank specialising in community listening and dialogue across a range of different communities. We work with a lot of place-based communities, but we also work with various communities of interest and identity. And working with young people has been something that we've done specifically for a few years now. We've sort of specialised in participatory research and engagement with young people to effectively co-design policy systems and public narratives on a range of different social and economic issues. We don't just work with young people on youth issues. That's a very important part of our work. We believe that young people should not just be consulted about young people's stuff. Community research is something that we've done in a range of local places, as well as national studies like this, because effectively when we're going out and talking to people about what matters to them and their own experiences, who better to do that than their peers and other people on the ground. So that's why it's been so fascinating to be designing this study with our 15 young researchers across the country, of which there's 3 here today. Nathuja and Natalia are just going to give you a very quick background to the project before we hear about some of the experiences from Rosa, Sahel and Tash.
Hi guys, really nice to meet you all. So I'm just going to quickly talk you through the project itself. So Journeys into Social Impact is a participatory research project which examines how young people are making social change on their own terms. So we started on the premise that young people are often described as socially conscious and values-led, but there's a lack of insight into what young people actually define as social impact and what sort of drives them to get involved in the first place. So yeah, we started with what is social impact. In terms of social impact, we saw it interchangeable with other terms such as social change and was just simply making a world a better place. But it doesn't necessarily need to be around sort of change, but it can also relate to conserving or safeguarding what we already have in place. So from our framework, we tried to look at a broad range of activities. So we looked at social activism, engagement in local communities, workplace engagement, politics and democracy, financial decisions and lifestyle choices. So we tried to make it as broad as possible. And yeah, one of the key findings from the research found that the term social impact is very broad, blurry. It's not a very well recognized term, which we'll sort of later delve into. So yeah, these are the project objectives we set out. So firstly, we wanted to understand the perceptions of social impact amongst young people. Through this, we looked at the motivations, drivers, enablers, and sort of potential barriers to participate in those activities. And we mapped support, sort of infrastructure, resources, and sort of gaps in sort of the support available. And through this, we looked at what we could do to support more young people to become the next generation of community leaders and change makers. So yeah, we adopted a range of methods to collect our research. So our community research program, where we recruited 15 or 16 community researchers up and down the country to carry out peer research in their communities. And then we also did participatory workshops. We hosted one every fortnight with the community researchers to explore different topics, which I'll talk to you in a minute. The community researchers also carried out sort of 80 interviews, which is really good, with sort of peers, family, friends in their networks. Alongside the whole community research, we also launched a survey, sort of distributed it sort of across our national network of young people and youth sector organisations. So this still remains open. But yeah, we've collected over 100 responses for that. And then finally, we carried out 2 stakeholder roundtables where we invited experts in the field to test sort of the emerging insights and hypotheses from the research itself. Yeah, so the workshops we carried out was with our sort of cohort of community researchers. So in each workshop, we sort of examined 1 research questions, as you can see, and then we also included a training session on research techniques. So you can see how to sort of carry out interviews, how to active listen, and so on. And then finally, the interview framework we developed with the community researchers. So we focused on a number of different types of social impact activities, like I said before, and each questions was split into sort experience, motivation, barriers, feelings, emotions, and how people relate to their community, and so on. I'm now going to pass it on to Natalia, who's going to talk about the findings.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm gonna briefly go through the key findings from the research, starting with journeys. We learned from the research that personal journeys into social impact are mostly shaped by upbringing and family circumstances, positive life experiences that gave you a sense of justice or a purpose in your perspective, or that shaped your identity. For example, going traveling or living within a specific community, as well as negative life experiences, such as time of uncertainty, feeling of marginalization, or poor mental health. Exposure to specific knowledge, for example, studying or learning skill which influence your values, identity, and choices in the future. Relationship with others. So I mentioned the family circumstances already, but this could also be mentors, other family members, or friends. And life transitions. So could have been moving house or school, starting or graduating uni, or starting new job. In terms of motivators, you can see quite a long list in here. I'm not gonna go through all these bullet points, but the motivators can be split into two categories. One of them is being motivated as a result of pure experience. So, for example, upbringing, existing knowledge, or pride in place. Whereas the second kind of group relates to being motivated in order to achieve something. This can be quite personal, so meeting new people or wanting to learn something, but also to address injustice or overall positive vision for the future. Looking at this graph, it's interesting to note that the positive motivators, for example, the doing something to build a better future, are more compelling reasons than negative ones. For example, combating injustice or specific problems, which is the third bar here. In terms of barriers, very often was mentioned lack of time, capacity, or resources, lack of knowledge about existing opportunities, as well as feeling overwhelmed or not sure, feeling overwhelmed of these opportunities and not sure how to prioritize or choose within the options. Accessibility or specific personal circumstances. This could be, for example, related to mental health or geographical kind of exclusion. Disillusionment, feeling powerless, feeling that whatever you do, it's not enough. Problems with the system, and the system being biased, with outdated processes and frameworks. Quite a lot of times the generational gap was mentioned. And feeling disconnected with others and struggling to find community, which we have to remember quite often takes a bit of time. Some of the two reflections on barriers and enablers that we found quite interesting is that there was a contradiction in terms of knowledge. So a lot of people mentioned that the lack of knowledge is a barrier for them. At the same time, a lot of people also mentioned that the variety of options and not knowing where to start is limiting and acted as a barrier for them. And the second thing is that barriers and enablers often stem from the same thing. So for example, in terms of mental health, creating social impact was a way to improve, is seen as a way to improve mental health, but burnout is also a problem for a lot of people. And the second thing relates to equality and marginalization, and engaging in social impact is seen as an outlet to deal and overcome with personal deprivation and trauma, but being marginalized can also pose a barrier to being involved in the first place. what came out from the research, it's that relationship matter and are important in personal journeys, and existing connections with groups or networks act as a snowball effect. So the more you get involved, the more opportunities you see and the more cases you get involved in. And getting involved is very often something that gives you hope and helps you to see bigger picture. And I'm going to pass back to Nutrition, who's going to speak about local communities.
Put myself on mute there. So yeah, the perceptions of the local was a complex issue that came up a lot in both our survey and interviews. People often said the local context was important, but there wasn't sort of much recognition or sort of acknowledgement of it. So in certain cases, some people said there was pride in place and giving back locally as a frequent driver for some, but sometimes there was also frequent mentions of alienation and lack of local community opportunities. Yeah. So Natalia, if you could just skip the slide to 22. Yeah, so as you can see, we asked our young people how they felt, or sort of emotions they felt when engaging with their local communities. For the most part, it's very positive. You know, there's feelings of sort of connection, empowerment and hopefulness. But the sort of outlier in those emotions is alienation, which is something that we sort of found in the interviews as well. I'm now going to pass it on to our sort of community researchers. So I think we're going to start with Rosa, who's going to now talk about her sort of experiences and insights from her interviews.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, I'm Rosa, really excited to be here today. So I'm just going to start by explaining a bit about myself, then about what I learned about how and why young people engage in social impact, and then what I feel this taught me about how your community businesses should engage with young people. So just to start, I'm 25 years old. I'm born and bred in London, and I live in London now too. In my day job, I work at the Politics Project. We're a non-partisan democratic education and engagement organisation, building trust and understanding between young people and politicians. I'm Jewish, and I have a background in community organising and volunteering, and spent time volunteering and then working for an ideological youth movement. So what I've learned is that a lot of young people feel that they engage with social impact through work, even those you might not traditionally view as creating positive social change, such as spoke to someone who is less engaged but works in finance and found ways that she engaged in social impact through that. Other people working at university. And so quite often that was a way people felt connected to making a positive difference. A lot of people are involved in the community. I mean, I spoke to a few people from my own community, and yeah, they do volunteering, and it seems like, but once they find an organisation whose mission they align with, a lot of it comes down to convenience and the chance, as there are just so many amazing organizations doing so many things. So sometimes it's almost like stumbled across those opportunities and got involved. I think there's also a lot of desire from young people to engage with organizations that understand the need for intersectionality, and how different things relate to people from marginalized identities, backgrounds, and so that came up with people that are involved in the climate movement. But there was also a strong feeling with young people where there was quite a varied opinion on the word activist, and whether people identify with that term or not. Even when I was speaking to people that I would be like, oh, they're an activist, they would say, I don't see myself as an activist. But yeah, it seems like once opportunities begin, they seem to continue. There's quite a snowballing effect. of different things that come up and different volunteering social positive impacts that people are taking part in. And it seems that often, some young people are struggling to name the little things that they do in day-to-day life, such as lifestyle choices that are so ingrained in youth culture, but do create positive social impact. So, for example, not eating meat or shopping in an ethical way. A lot of people did do that, but they didn't really see that straight away as something that they were doing in their life. I think, quite often, so it's so ingrained that people don't even notice. And yeah, there were definitely driving force from moments of injustice that people have had related to aspects of their identity or other people they know that have really lit the fire in them to get more involved. But yeah, there were definitely a lot of struggles, as the team have already mentioned, such as being able to switch off, feeling anxious, issues with mental health, and also finances. But yeah, what I feel that this has taught me is that youth-led shouldn't be just like a tick box. It should be something that is being properly engaged with. So how Caroline already spoke about young people being able to co-design initiatives they're involved in, feeling very empowered and not just being an afterthought. Also thinking about what young people are getting out of engaging in return. So quite often mentorship is a very positive way and something that young people are looking for that can be hard to find. Making sure that you know your audience, so advertising for looking for young people where they'll see it. So for example, young people in their 20s might be on Twitter, but kind of less likely that anyone under the age of 20 is going to be there. They'll be on different platforms. And yeah, when you're engaging, don't ask really broad questions. Make sure you break down things. So for example, with local issues, there's a lot that might not have thought about before. But yeah, and do try and make an effort to reach those that aren't usually engaged. So you could do that through schools, community centres, and also financial incentive, as these things do take more effort, but it is really worthwhile to get a big, wide range of diverse voices and people involved. And yeah, don't homogenize young people. Everyone has completely different experiences and opinions about the world, so stay open-minded. And yeah, don't underestimate the power of local. It's amazing what you're doing. Yeah, we find in my work with the politics project with young people and politicians, we find that working with local politicians is most likely to lead to real world change. And yeah, I think that as well, just bear in mind that imposter syndrome is quite an issue for a lot of young people. I was at an event yesterday, which is about political representation, and they said that it usually takes 3 times for you to ask a woman to stand for to be in parliament or a councillor than it does for a man. So just keep that in mind, that, you know, even if someone doesn't say yes to an opportunity once, keep trying and engaging with people, and yeah, hopefully you'll make a positive difference. So that's everything from me. But yeah, happy to answer any questions later.
Great, thanks, Rosa. I think now Sahil's gonna talk.
Yeah, sorry, I just had myself on mute. Yeah, nice to meet you guys. I'm Sahil. It's great being here, you know, listening in and, you know, being part of something so great. A bit about myself. I'm a part-time master's student born and raised in London, and I go to uni in London. And I also work in campaigns, have worked in fundraising, and have a platform that facilitates intersections and intersectionalities for young people to, you know, get involved into creative spaces and journalism. What I'm going to talk about today is some of the barriers to social impact that I found and how we can move towards solutions with kind of, you know, different ideas that came out of some of the workshops I participated in. So specific isolated barriers that I found quite interesting, which I won't be covering in much depth, but I just thought it would be quite interesting to mention, was feelings of discrimination, racial discrimination in creative industries, which took me by surprise slightly. in London, and difficulties in engaging with sustainable fashion as a consumer due to kind of greenwashing and stuff like that. So if there are any community businesses that work in sustainability, then, you know, comms work and stuff like that would, you know, be great. More broadly, naturally, as I kind of expected, but it was interesting to consolidate this, the barriers of time and funding for young people was kind of a permeating theme across everyone I spoke to. Obviously, I should caveat that everyone I spoke to was from London and around the same age as me, so between 23 and 26. So, you know, that is a sampling caveat. But what I found was related to funding is, of course, this, what I'm about to say isn't, you know, these things aren't mutually exclusive, but I found some people feeling as though that the work they do that yields a lot of social impact, you know, whether that's, you know, local business, public sector, NGO, charity jobs, they were kind of struggling with the wider structural problems of austerity, cost of living and stuff like that. And I even spoke to someone who works in campaigning, which is something that, you know, you could say definitely yields social impact, feeling as though they had to make some sort of sacrifice between, you know, when their contract runs out to moving towards something that may not be as socially impactful, but, you know, allows them to fulfill kind of like a base hierarchy of needs, you know, within the context of living in London and stuff like that. So I thought that was something interesting to pick up on. Interestingly, I would say this as well, and the person that I interviewed would identify as working class. So what this kind of led me to think was kind of, you know, people must be cautious of a brain drain of skilled people away from socially impactful work. Again, I'm sure community businesses, the agency isn't there, the problems are quite structural, but it's something to be wary of in the coming years. A lot of people I speak to just generally feel as though they might not be able to, you know, there might be some sort of brain drain towards things that might not be as socially impactful in the workplace. Now, I think that the funding also relates to the lack of funding in creative spheres. And I know there's a lot of great initiatives out there to do more work, but it's something that I picked up on. Now, naturally, funding and time intersect. So, you know, if there were more grants available for creative projects, for example, then, you know, people would have naturally more time. The other thing I wanted to pick up on was on the lack of connection with the local sphere. Again, caveat this with London, it kind of might be a big city thing as well. People I spoke to from London or living in London, they'd all grown up in London, feel a lack of kind of connection, and myself included, with the local polity, neighborhood, area, postcode, but not with kind of more bigger kind of regions or like globally and stuff like that. There is a connection with like different, you know, the identity, but it kind of breaks down when it comes to the local for people I spoke to. Now, what I thought was really interesting was some of the workshop stuff we did about kind of solutions to this. There was an interesting idea about, well, from one of the other researchers about bringing together kind of like a social impact dating app, which was quite interesting. But as an extension of that, I was thinking about kind of, you know, especially in the digital era and trying to kind of mobilize young people to get involved. Things like apps and stuff like that, that, you know, someone could develop if they're interested in like kind of the tech sphere to, that can penetrate through to young people through all different kind of intersectionalities, and also older people as well, that, you know, might be based on your region, and it could just be apps based on environmental work, volunteering work, things that you could do in your local community, but in an app form that might be quite easy to access, because, and that might solve the issues of, you know, time and funding barriers, but also community, you know, feelings of connection with your local community. There was also interesting ideas around kind of that we came up with around kind of employment initiatives and constituencies. I'm sure many do this, but, you know, that, you know, designate certain hours of work to working with local communities. Perhaps maybe institutionalizing this could be an interesting opportunity to navigate some issues around time and funding barriers, and also from the perspective of, you know, corporate sector, private sector, corporate private sector people, you know, how could they fit this in? You know, an easy solution would be to put it as part of their environmental, social governance quotas and stuff like that, you know, and that could, you know, albeit as, you know, naturally, hopefully foster some sort of community cohesion and offer an interesting solution for, you know, funding and time barriers, as is, you know, moving towards a 4-day working week as well. These things should be taken into consideration. But yeah, that's me.
Great, thank you, Sahil. And finally, our last speaker, Rosa. No, sorry, Tash. Our last research ready. Yeah.
Hiya, hi everyone. I'm Tash. Thank you for Power to Change and Common Vision for having us. Really excited to talk a little bit about our findings. So a bit about me. I'm 25. This year I recently started my own community interest company. It's called Queensway, and it's a community for underrepresented artists, particularly focusing on the electronic music industry. So we work predominantly with female, non-binary and LGBTQ plus people. So I am from Birkenhead, which is in Merseyside. I now live in Liverpool, which is just over the river. So yeah, I guess I've got quite a different experience to Rosa and Sahil because of my location, which is quite interesting. So the main thing which I kind of uncovered from my interviews was this idea of Scouse pride within the local community. I'd just like to share a quote from one of my interviews, which I thought encompassed this really nicely. So a young man that I interviewed said that the spirit of Liverpool is in its roots, it is working class, it is selfless, and it's a product of an environment from my own morals, which have been installed through my upbringing. Knowing what you give and the energy that you put out spreads, therefore makes you part of a wider connective consciousness within a community that feeds back to a cycle. So I think that kind of like links in really nicely with what Natalia was saying about our upbringing and maybe like our morals or parenting shaping your social change impact. I also think that we can see this like sense of community as a huge motivation for young people, which people might find interesting because traditionally I think community might be viewed as something for older people. So I found that quite interesting, where young people created community from throwing like parties in safe spaces, inclusive kind of diverse events. So kind of really like modernizing our idea of what community means. Also found that people being friends with like-minded people who share the same goals, partners sharing the same mindsets, that was a big reoccurring theme for motivation within social change. Also people saying that work doesn't feel like work if you're doing something you love with people that you love. In terms of barriers for social engagement or like continuing your social work, ageism was a big thing that came up in my interviewees. So particularly from a youth worker who said that working as a facilitator and a practitioner at the age of 17, he wouldn't be directly addressed when working in schools, and he would be patronized and treated unprofessionally and treated more like a student when he was actually working as a professional. I think that's also something that I can relate to as a young person who's set up their own kind of social enterprise. It's a general feeling that you're not being taken seriously because I am a young woman, perhaps. So yeah, they were two things to consider in terms of barriers. Other barriers included funding, awareness of funding and how a CIC or a social business might operate, people not understanding that you can pay yourself a wage from funding was a big barrier. I think people kind of presume that it's all your own input financially, and yes, you can't profit from a CIC, but you can certainly pay yourself a fair wage. And I found it particularly confusing and hard to understand that when researching, different CICs. Do I want to go down CIC by shares or by guarantee kind of route? And the only way I really found informative in making my decision was talking to other founders of CICs in my local area. So really lucky to have a few amazing CICs like Futureyard and Melodic Distraction around me, and both of them have almost act like parent CICs to me, really kind of shaped my decision making within my own business, which is great, but I'm very privileged to have that relationship with them and to know where to go if I needed to find out more about a certain topic. So I think creating that community where young people can go and ask more experienced people is really essential. Finally, a lack of general awareness as well within the university system. So I spoke to a lot of students, a lot of accounting firms when I was starting up my CIC, and a lot of universities don't even, if you're doing a business or an entrepreneurship degree, it's like social enterprises and businesses aren't even covered in any of your modules. So how can we even expect young people to start social initiatives or be getting involved with social enterprises if they're not even taught about or covered at a degree level? So yeah, I think that's all my findings wrapped up fairly quickly. I know we're running a bit behind, so I tried to wrap it up, but yeah, happy to answer any more questions on the chat or after.
Great, thank you so much all. That was really, really interesting. As I said, we are a little bit behind, so I'm just going to pass straight over to Leon and Freya at Global Grooves.
Hi everyone. I'm going to talk for a little bit and then I will hand over to Freya. My name is Leon Patel. I'm the Chief Executive, for want of a better title, of Global Grooves. And I was asked a question, kind of why work and why engage with young people from the kind of perspective of a leader of an organization, a social organization. And for me, that's an unusual question to be asked because it's not something that our organization has ever considered, because working with young people has always been completely embedded from the beginning. So it's not really something that we sit and discuss. It's not at the top of the agenda. It's just part of what we do. It's within the foundation of Global Grooves and our organization. And I think probably that's a lot to do with the culture that we try to promote here and preserve here. And I've got a few pictures to share, and I'll just wanted to talk a little bit about our journey to try and put this in a little bit of context. And I'll just try and share my screen. Hopefully you can all see that. So Global Grooves is a international carnival and outdoor arts organisation. We also run a community building. So we have an art centre based in Greater Manchester that's also the Carnival Centre of Excellence for the Northwest of England. The image that you can see here is actually a production that we put together for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which involved around 250 people from all around Greater Manchester, from every borough, and we created a new piece of work that paraded as part of the Jubilee pageant. And actually, the whole project was led by young people. We had the youngest producer that worked on the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, which was Freya, who's going to talk in a minute, but also the youngest musical director, who's actually been working with us since she was around 8 or 9 years old. Well, not quite working at that age, but within the organisation. And what we do is we sell productions, or we create productions for other organisations, for festivals, for producers, everything from kind of giant puppets and sets to pieces of music to full performances. But why we do what we do is obviously our kind of social impact. And we work with almost every kind of person within our community. So it's not just young people, it's not older people, it's not people from diverse backgrounds, it's everybody that we work with. And that's the kind of, so our kind of social impact is based on engaging those people through the process of creating the work. So everything is joined up and everything is embedded with each other. Our kind of products are never really disconnected from our social impact. So everything that we create has a training and development program within it, whether it's a professional production that's touring internationally or just a smaller event locally, there's always an embedded training and development strand within that. And just sort of briefly of how Global Grooves came about in kind of the mid 90s, was with myself. So this is me involved in carnival in the local area when I was much younger, and I'd always had an interest in music, and it was a community business on the kind of doorstep where I started to attend. I started to learn more about carnival arts and more about music, and I met Holly. So we met when I was 15, Holly was 14, and very soon after joining the kind of local community business that we worked with, we started to lead that organisation. So we had amazing mentors within that community business that allowed us to take a leadership role from a very, very young age. Through that process, we realised that perhaps some of the organisations that we're involved in that were largely led by adults weren't quite serving us as well as perhaps they could be. There were things that they were doing that were maybe not as tailored to young people's development as perhaps they thought. So we took it on our own kind of shoulders to create our own community business, which was Global Grooves. And we started to develop a project that kind of addressed some of those areas where provision was lacking. And that's the reason why Global Grooves came about in the first place. And we set a kind of mission between ourselves to create something that was really addressing that lack of kind of quality and was able to highlight the opportunities for those that were already engaged with kind of creating music and performance work. So how we kind of built our team was through considering diversity. And when we talk about diversity, I often sit in kind of meetings with various funders and various different kind of collectives of leaders around Greater Manchester, and the kind of top of the agenda around diversity is always kind of ethnic, socio-economic, access, disability. They're all the things that people are talking about, which are crucially important. But within our own agendas, when we're speaking around diversity in Global Grooves, we try to kind of steer away from that idea and talk more about diversity in a wider form. Diversity of kind of political thinking, of experience, of age, is for us more important, because within that diversity of thinking are all of those people in the cross-section of our communities. And without diversity of thought, which is crucial, we can't really be as dynamic and progressive and as relevant as we might want to be. People like us. So people like, I like people like me, and people like me attract more people like me. And that's because it feels kind of easy, it's familiar, it's kind of non-confrontational. There's difference and change is kind of much harder to embrace and make friends with than something that's the same as you. And for us, that kind of difference, particularly in thoughts and in ideas, is crucial, really, really crucial. And in our teams, we think that it's really, really important that we've got those ideas and those kind of thoughts to complement and challenge and discuss. And of course, young people are a key voice in those conversations that we have. So in our teams, we need that kind of collaboration. We need to have autonomy. We need to have team members need to have kind of agency. We also need understanding and technical knowledge and the skills to develop our products and services. And we need to be kind of expert in what we do. For us, kind of young people are really, really crucial in that conversation, particularly when we're talking about creating work that's engaging entire communities. Because I don't really know, being a little bit older now, perhaps what young people might want to see on the streets, what young people might want to experience within their training. So all the time we're building into our core business ways of engaging and ways of nurturing young people, and actually people from all cross sections of our kind of society. And one of the ways in which we bring young people into our team is by our Future Leaders program. So Future Leaders is kind of about developing young people's understanding of their art form. And 50% of the kind of project is about excellence in music, in dance, in visual arts, in costume. But within that program, the other 50% is about how to use that art to develop and support social action. So we kind of use music and use creativity as a carrot to bring young people in so that they can really, really get to grips with the things that they're really interested in developing, and gently kind of nurture that experience so young people can understand how they might translate their art form and their passion into social action. But rather than me kind of talking about that anymore, I'm going to hand over to Freya.
Hiya. Shall we? I wonder if, yeah, that one. Thank you. I'm Freya, and I got carroted once. No, yeah, I'm now a producer at Global Grooves, so kind of supporting a lot of that. The creation of some of the productions like you just saw for the Platinum Jubilee, and others to come. I'm kind of newer in this role, but I've been working for Global Grooves for 4 years. well, but I've been working with them since 2015. I mentioned I got carroted because I was involved in the Future Leaders programme, and at the time I was 15 and I wanted to learn some new dance styles and see what I could do with my dance. I didn't know. I think I only really thought, maybe I might go to university and do dance. I don't really know what that might have meant next. I would have liked to have run my own dance school one day, but didn't even know the first place to start. So yeah, I thought I'd give it a go. I think, I learned lots about kind of new dance styles, global dance styles and art forms, and how that works with large groups of drummers, and there could be even bigger groups and kind of movements of people, and it was all kind of deeply rooted in traditions and cultures, and I just found that mind-blowing. And also the idea that these kind of groups of people and movements can kind of make a real change, and also as individuals practicing these art forms as well. So kind of came away from that course, still quite early days and perhaps less mature in my thinking, but with all these kind of new ideas and tools and different keys for different doors to unlock of like what, pathways might be out there for me. And I think I was kind of encouraged, by many of the different tutors and people that I was meeting, even some of the other participants who are perhaps a bit older than me, to kind of like really value my creativity and, believe in that change that can be made on a local scale, but also kind of nationally and globally as well. And yeah, kind of following that course, I was just dead keen to kind of put some of that into practice and get more involved, and living only like 20-minute walk from where we're sat now. I just kind of got dead stuck in with everyone and was, welcomed to kind of try out lots of different things that were going on here, whether it was supporting some of the community workshops for a local festival, or, oh, do you fancy helping out with an event that's going on later, or what else do you want to do? I want to dance in one of your costumes. Great, here you go. And I think I think having a team here who were friendly and open and welcoming enough, where we could have conversations about what I was interested in, about what else was going on here, about other things that were going on at Global Grooves, meant that, where opportunities became available, there was kind of already that dialogue about what I was interested in. And I think I felt like I'd found a place here and was valued with my contribution. And same goes, from helping out at a cinema night at the Vale, all the way to kind of like helping to produce a festival or an event. And it's still very true. But yeah, I think there's a lot of generosity here, and I think, from like people like Leon and Holly and Iraldo, who are kind of directors, but throughout the team as well. I know that I definitely feel the value of that generosity for me, and now feel like I want to also give that generosity back. And I think that's, really important to be passing on as well. And, for people to feel valued. But I think to round up, I guess what it's meant for me, apart from kind of feeling super inspired to being a part of continuing to make this change that people like Holly and Leon were inspired to continue. I'm now inspired to continue. And I think, if you spoke to 2015 Freya, she was a very different person. I think, having those opportunities to kind of push myself and to try new things, and to maybe, be a part of a project or creating something that I wasn't too sure if I could do, but being pushed to do that in an environment where I was supported, but kind of trusted. And so it didn't feel like, what's the word? It didn't feel hierarchical, or that I was being micromanaged. It was kind of like an opportunity for me to put myself out there. And if it didn't work out, I would be supported where I needed, but that the power was in my hands, kind of thing. And I think over time, through those little things, or doing that thing and this thing that's slightly different, that's kind of meant that, yeah, I feel very excited about what's to come, and kind of confident to be able to speak to you guys and other people, and in my own personal life as well. Yeah, it's made a huge difference for me, and kind of given a very different kind of sense of purpose to what I would have thought I might wanted, but I think a very, very powerful one. And yeah, I think that's probably me before I go on any longer. But if anyone has any questions, stick them in Q&As and chats and stuff.
Thank you so much, Leanne and Freya. That was really amazing. So we do only have a few minutes left. If you do have any questions, please do pop them into the chat here. We will ask all of the panelists and send them out afterwards. We'll also have the top 10 tips that Natalia is going to run through very shortly, in how community businesses can engage with young people. That'll only take a couple of minutes, but any questions, pop them in. We'll get back to you afterwards. There'll be a big email out on Monday. I'm going to hand you over to Natalia for just 5 highlights of the top 10 tips.
Sorry. Yeah, so these are some takeaways from our previous research with Power to Change, where we case studied a number of community businesses who already work with young people and looked at what have been effective and appealing to their young staff members, volunteers, and customers. Because of the times, I won't run through every point, but there's some, I'm going to highlight a couple of the points here. First of them being connect through values. Many social organizations, and especially community businesses, are grounded in values of social justice, equality, collaboration, and power sharing. These are values which appeal to young people, so be explicit about those. Second point that I would like to highlight is make it social. As Tash said at the beginning, young people, earlier on, young people are often attracted to social and community events. 3, engage with people at key life transitions, such as leaving education, leaving home, or moving to a new place of work. Nurture ideas. Consider how young staff members can grow their own ideas within the organization, but also how your community businesses could help fledgling startups, as young people often need support from another organizations. And finally, also to summarize my earlier points, it's important to remember it's not just about age, and involving people, young people, as a part of building an organization which is inclusive, intergenerational, and intersectional. As Ross has said, young people are all different and will want and need different things. And it's culture of openness and inclusivity that's important. Yeah, and that's it from my part.
Thank you so much, and thank you all. It was such a pleasure to hear from everyone today. I hope you're feeling as inspired and ready to take some of these learnings into the next year as I am. As I said, we'll be sending a big mail out on Monday, so you will get all these top 10 tips. You'll get videos, including one of Leon and Freya at Global Grooves, to inspire you further. So thank you all. That was absolutely brilliant. I'm really pleased to have heard from you all. I should say as well that Plunkett Foundation are also offering support, free business support, training and networking opportunities for community businesses looking to work with young people aged 16 to 21. So please do check that out. We'll also include that in the email. So thank you all, and great to see you today. Okay, bye.